let's see if this works. I hope it does. I'm on the upper deck of my house here in Los Angeles. This is where I usually test spotting scopes. I'm gonna walk around with a phone that I used to record this on a tripod for a little bit while I talk. So I've got 3 spotting scopes here. I've got a Vortex Razor 65mm. I've got 2 eyepieces on it, the zoom, wide angle 25 to 50. And this guy, which is their fixed power, a wide angle eyepiece that is 18 power on a 65mm spotter. I'm using my lapel mic. I hope the sound's coming in. This is a view from my house. The distant mountains are about 18-20 miles away. The church you see there that I often look at is 750 yards. And I see 2 freeways, 101 that's about a mile away, and 118 at the base of those mountains that's about 12-13 miles away. So there is a lot to see. This is not the clearest day, but it's not too bad. Let me see if I can zoom in a little bit. Right, so let me put this down. Apologize for the shaking. But anyhow, so that's kind of the stuff I look at, right? So now let's look back at what I'm testing today. I'm not really testing, I'm done testing them, I'm just talking about them. In this case, this is sort of a flimsy little tripod that I'm using, because all the good tripods have stuff sitting in them, either spotting scopes or rifle scopes. Okay, so let's hope it all works. Howdy, nice beautiful day in Los Angeles. We're in November, it's 85 degrees, mild breeze. The one redeeming feature this freaking state has. Vortex Razor that I already mentioned. Another scope that I have on hand is this guy. This is the new Athlon Chronos. It's a variable 8-42 power rifle scope with a 60mm objective lens, and it comes with a little screw-in sunshade, kind of like a rifle scope style sunshade. That actually makes a difference, especially at wide angle. Except I keep on screwing up the threads. Here we go. Okay. And another spotter that I have here right now is a Meopta collapsible spotter. I happen to like collapsible spotters. So there's an eyepiece. When it's with the eyepiece and everything, it's waterproof. Without with the eyepiece cover, it's waterproof. Eyepiece is replaceable. This particular eyepiece is a 30 power wide angle eyepiece with a reticle. If you are carrying it around, it compacts and becomes nice and small, but then you pull it out and then becomes a proper spotting scope, and it's a nice one. It also has a simple meal reticle in it. So let me see, I've got this fixture here that points the spotters in more or less same direction. I'm gonna point them out. There you go. Okay. Fixed power, 30 power, zoom 8-42, zoom 25 to 50, or fixed 18. This guy, the Vortex, does not have a reticle in it. These 2 scopes do, which I kind of like. I helped Athlon with some features of the ranging reticle they've gotten here, but mostly it's their design. I just added a couple of minor features to it. So from that standpoint, this is really not a comparison per se. What I'm mostly trying to do is talk about these 3 spotting scope types and talk through a little bit of what I care about. In general, the use of spotting scopes has, at least as far as shooters are concerned, has diminished fairly substantially in recent years, largely because the rifle scopes have gotten quite good and quite good at high power, right? So I'm going to record another video today talking about scopes that go up to 30 power, 30, and with fairly respectable image quality, where does it fully replace a spotting scope? No. Is it good enough for most purposes a gun guy like me would have? Yeah. So, but still, there is a use case for these things, and especially for people like me who spend a lot of time shooting fairly far out with low power scopes. I really like the 4 power prism scopes, like the Alcan I shoot and all that, and for spotting, etc., a spotting scope is a good idea. So let's first talk about the Vortex. I've had this guy here for a long time, and the Vortex people have been gracious enough to let me hold on to it for a bit. I'm about to send it back. There are some things about this scope that I really like, and some things that I don't. In terms of pure image quality, it is excellent. It is just excellent. It's not going to compete with a Kova 88mm Prominar anytime soon, but it doesn't cost like one either. And for what you're paying, it's really nice. This scope, it was made in China, right? Which I don't have too many problems with, but to the best of my knowledge, Vortex gets these, and then they basically take it apart and realign a bunch of stuff. Single, nice, large focusing wheel. Wide angle eyepiece, and this eyepiece goes from 22 power to, 48 on a 65mm scope. Here's an interesting thing, right? So with my big Jewish nose, when I want to get behind the scope, I can't just get straight on it because my nose starts bumping into it, and it gets worse at high magnification. I really have to get in there. So in order to be able to have an unobstructed view, I basically have to go like this, which I find irritating, right? So this is the problem with the most modern wide-angle eyepieces. They are physically large, and if you've got a nose protruding, you're gonna hit it. So what I really prefer is the fixed power eyepiece. It's lower magnification, but it's enough for me. Look at how much smaller it is in diameter, right? And it's 18 power and 65mm spotter, and it is 22 power on an 85mm, right? And then when that goes on there, this is an entirely different ball game, and this is a long eye-relief eyepiece, and image quality through this thing is just beautiful. At the 18 power with this fixed eyepiece, I see more than I do at 22 power with a variable eyepiece. Now, I cannot dial it up, so there's that. But there's a lot to be said about simplicity, and when I look through this guy, everything is just perfect. Sharp, clear, and everything. I'm looking at the street that goes from one freeway to the other. I take it when I go to work every day. So, I mean, I can see amazing amount of detail even on this. Reasonably clear, but not the clearest day. But anyhow, so that's the Vortex. Let's talk about Meopta. I've had this guy for a while also, so it needs to go back. The spotter is called TGA 75. You know what, let me see if it's still recording. It says it is. Right, I'm about 8 minutes into it. Okay, let's hope the sound is recording too. Google recently changed their a built-in camera app to be able to use external microphones, which is what I'm using right now. This whole dangling thing is the lapel mic and an extension and all that sort of crap. Let's hope all this shit works. But anyhow, so I've got this Meopta scope made in the Czech Republic. They do have a variable eyepiece for this. I think I wanted to look at one that has a reticle in it, and that's the fixed power. So this particular eyepiece does not extend. It has this folding eye cup, which I have a love-hate relationship with. It's pretty good in controlling stray light, but the eye relief on this guy is very short. Like, for example, with glasses, I can't really use this even with the eye cup folded. This is how close I have to get to it. It's not bad, it's workable, image quality is quite good. Comparable to what I get out of the Razor HD with a zoom eyepiece at the same magnification, maybe a touch better, and your field of view is wider, right? It's a fixed power eyepiece. But you can see that this is an older design. That having been said, if you're looking something with excellent image quality that can become compact for transportation, this is a very viable option. Everything is smooth, everything is nice, it's rubberized, it doesn't slip. I don't particularly like how they did the mounting footment. That's one of my few real complaints about it. Let me remove it from the fixture so you can see. Okay. So there is a normal tripod adapter, but the strap that holds the eyepiece cover and objective cover is routed through it. So setting this up on a tripod is sort of a pain in the ass, a little bit, right? Because you have to, route the the tape on which this whole thing hangs and all that sort of jazz, right? I thought it wasn't a good idea. And while we're talking about tripod mounting, one of the things I really like about the Vortex scope is that the way it is set up, if you look at it, let's see, where is it? Here. Okay, there's no adapter plate. The foot of the tripod is machined, in this case, to work with the Manfrotto/Swarovski tripod, right? I use both Manfrotto and I use Arca Swiss. I don't particularly care which tripod adapter you machine in there, as long as there's also a 1/4 underneath. But why not make it in a shape that it fits at least one common tripod type, right? So I wish everybody would do it, but everybody isn't. Meopta didn't do it. Athlon didn't do it. I gave them that as a feedback. So maybe something will change. I don't know. And lastly, let's talk about the Athlon. So this is sort of an interesting design. The direct competition for this is Bushnell's LMSS, which is similarly configured. I have a fair amount of mileage with the LMSS. It's got this little Horus type reticle in it, which I don't like. And optically, the new Chronos looks to be better than LMSS. And also, you can mount a little Picatinny rail on it, and there is an adapter that basically allows you to put in a laser rangefinder or something like that. And with a little knob, you can adjust the tilt. I have a SIG. Let me see if I can get this going quickly enough. Yeah. I have a SIG laser rangefinder, the 20 kilo 2400. It's got an adapter, so you can put an adapter on here, and the laser rangefinder goes like this, and you can basically spot and determine range all in one fell swoop, so to speak. I'm not sure I'm crazy about SIG's adapter, but it works. But anyhow, so that's the idea behind the Chronos. The really interesting thing about the Chronos is that inside it's really built more like a rifle scope than a typical spotting scope, the way the optics are done inside. So that allows you to have a pretty broad zoom range, right? So you can think of it as basically just a very short eye rifle scope, right? That gives you some interesting opportunities where you can put in the reticle. It also makes the whole thing fairly small and fairly compact. You give up a little bit optically to a traditional rifle scope, right? So there is a reasonable eye relief. You can see where my eye is with respect to the scope, right? This is, now I'm on 42 power. What I like is that to get full field of view, let's focus this, focus. I do not have to touch the spotter, since these are fairly high magnification devices. I really prefer to be able to just get my eye in there and look. It's not as sharp at 42 power as at high power as, for example, the Vortex is, the more conventional. But it's serviceable. It's better than serviceable. It's quite good. Not world beating, but good. As I scale magnification back just a little bit, as I get down to 30, it's really respectable. Is it as good as, let's say, Meopta is at 30? No, not quite. But it is very, very good. And for the money, and for the size, and for the compactness, it's very, very, very good. Where the part that I find really awesome, because it goes down to, what's it? Oh, it's a 7 to 42, excuse me, I said 8. Because it goes down to 7 power. At 7 power, the field of view is very wide. And the reticle is not at its most visible. It gets a little thin because it's a sort of a front focal plane design. But at low power, if I am so inclined, I can use this thing as a monocular, right? And that, for me, is extremely valuable, right? I can basically do this and take a quick look at something, right? And then if I'm so inclined, I can just lean it against something. There's a flat bottom here, so you can put it on any flat surface. I can lean it against something and dial the magnification up. And right now I'm at what, about 20 power, and with some reasonable rest, I can easily scan and look at stuff and do things. And now I can range. Right now there's a reticle. I'll put a picture of the reticle in the write-up. now there's a reticle and I can range. If I want to go much above 20 power, you should really, put it on something fairly permanent, but even something like the top of your backpack is going to be pretty respectable. Okay, I use this fixture so I can have a couple of spotters side by side, but it's really usable, right? So you sacrifice some basic optical quality for the magnification range, but there's like for birders, this is not going to cut it. The birders will want more, but for something that gives me the broad mag range and a reticle, so I can do some range estimation, I can spot shots for others, it ain't bad, right? In terms of pure optical quality, so the best in this group would be the Vortex with the fixed power eyepiece, right? And at 30 power, the fixed power eyepiece with the Meopta is quite good. But in terms of flexibility, the Cronus Tactical is really king. And in many ways, these designs do not really compete against each other, because depending on how you use your spotting scope, you will choose one over the other almost irrespective of the basic optical quality, right? And the expectations of optical quality also change depending on your use case. If I want the most flexibility and I need to range targets, I'm gonna just go with the Chronos, right? If I am looking for something that gives me the most optical quality for the money, well, the Razor is definitely in a contention, although it's a pretty competitive marketplace. It's definitely in a contention. If I just need to sit at the range and spot things, this little 18-hour eyepiece gives me amazing depth of field and really nice image quality. I can, for example, what I'm looking at right now, I've got a hospital over there, Kaiser Permanente. It's about 1.5 miles out. And I've got mountains behind it at about 20 miles out, and everything is in pretty decent focus. And and I can see, windows and air conditioners and trees, and a little closer up, mile out, I can see individual leaves. It's really impressive what I can get with this guy. Right. My only, like I said, real complaint is with the zoom eyepiece. Image quality is very good, but it is larger diameter. And I bump my nose in it. It disturbs the side picture. Not sure what to do with it, but it works and it's viable. But I really like the slim eyepiece, right? For example, for a spotter like this, if Vortex gave me this 18 power fixed eyepiece and maybe let's say a 30 power fixed eyepiece, between these two fixed eyepieces, I would never buy the zoom. I would just have two eyepieces and use them for different conditions. Same with the Meopta. I'm really impressed with the compactness. I like collapsible spotters. 30 power eyepiece alone is not great. I would have preferred a lower power as the only fixed option with the reticle, but they've been making it for a long time and it clearly works for them. And it is a very compelling design. My big complaint really is eye relief. I would have liked to have just a touch more eye relief, so I don't bump into the eyepiece so much when I look through it. But it is clear, it is sharp, the reticle is simple, it works. One of the interesting things that there are some, this is sort of a personal preference in a way. In Athlon, the way we position the reticle, it's just below center, right? So when I use it, okay, now this one is almost right on center. I would have preferred it to be, I guess I didn't do it, that's interesting. So I asked them to put the reticle just below center, so at the very center I have an obstructed view, but they didn't do it. They put the reticle right in the center, so which I'm not a big fan of, but all the reticle grid is in the center and down. The whole upper half is completely free for observation. With the Meopta, the reticle is right in the center and it goes up, down, left and right. Doesn't obscure much, but I prefer to have the reticle just a little bit offset, right? Because I only use the reticle for ranging. For observation, I don't, and I'd like to have some unobstructed observation. Outside of that, if you look at the traditional optical qualities, none of these show me a whole lot of chromatic aberration. Even now, in the middle of the day, as I look out, there is very little CA to see. I have that church at 700 something yards out there, that gives me some nice sharp edges. There it is. That I can look at to see what I get with chromatic aberration, right? And as I look through this, so there's a little bit of yellow going through Meopta, not much else. So the way that church looks is that there is kind of a pyre, a tall part where the cross is, and there is a bunch of spikes so that birds don't sit there. So I can see, these are basically large nails upside down. I can see the individual nails with this thing, which is really good, but there is a little bit of CA on that, a little bit yellow, a little bit purple. I have to pay attention to see it. CA is not super significant, but as you go off axis a little bit, you start picking it up. When you're right on axis, not so much. If I point the Chronos at the same church, I was messing with it, so it's a little bit misaligned. I need to reset it. There you go. Okay. Same business. There's a little bit of chromatic aberration, especially as I move in and focus, but it is respectable. It is clearly less sharp. For example, I set it on 30 power, same as the Meopta, and I look at it and I can have it slightly focused. I still can see individual nails on top of the building, but they're not as sharp. And there is a little bit of CA, but you see it less, partly because the image is a little bit less sharp. But still, like I said, I'm looking at individual nails on the roof of a building 758 yards away. So not too shabby. With the Vortex on 18 power, it's a lot less power. I see a lot more, still see the individual nails, and the only chromatic aberration I can pick up is when I really move off axis. If I stay on axis, there's none. At least there's none that I can see. If I go with the zoom eyepiece, let me swap that out. Let's put it on 30 power. To make it sort of equal between these, and let's focus. There we go. It's nice, it's wide, I can see well, but I'm beginning to bump into the eyepiece a little bit. It's a newer design, so ultimately I see. Do I see better than with the Meopta? It's pretty similar. In terms of basic image quality, it's pretty similar to the Meopta. The color cast is a little bit different. The Chinese and the Japanese scope both have a more neutral color cast, even tending very slightly to the blue side. While the Meopta is very slightly warm. So to look a little bit contrasted to the colors will look just a little bit richer in that regard in terms of the rich colors. So this has the Chronos has the most toned down colors. This is the warmest, the colors are the richest, and Vortex is very, very close to neutral. Okay. Yeah. But anyhow, so the basic conclusion here is that if you are looking for a spotting scope for generic observation, you don't care about reticles and other such stuff, you're not going to drag it around with you too much, a conventional spotting scope like the Razor is really the way to go. This is where you get the most image quality for the money. Once reticles, distance estimation, other things start coming into the equation, you need to be making some compromises unless you want to use a, Swarovski with a reticle. I used to have one, I sold it. It was a really nice spotter, I just never really used it too much. And it was 80 millimeter was too big for me to drag around. And there, Meopta gives me better image quality than the Chronos. But if I were to say which one would I spend my money on, I would probably have to go for the flexibility of the Chronos. And this one is a prototype. I think production ones are slightly better optically, but this one is really respectable. And like I said, if for your trade benchmark you use the Bushnell LMSS, this is sort of a next gen of that. It's a little bit better, works real well. And in terms of the flexibility of use, from using it as a handheld monocular to a long-range spotting scope to spot impact and observe things, this is really good. That's really impressive. anyhow, that's it on the spotting scopes. I did look at them in low light. None of them had any major stray light issues, anything like that. So the low light performance basically tracked the objective in there. Exit pupil, all of them were decent. The Chronos does benefit from having the sunshade on when you have bright things in the field of view. But let's be honest, people don't use spotting scopes in the dark too much. And when you do, being able to dial the magnification of the Chronos down was extremely helpful. Right? But all of them work. I'm pretty happy with all three. And if it fits your use case, I probably would be comfortable recommending all three of these as necessary. Once again, thank you for watching this. If you have managed to suffer through this whole sequence of my ramblings, I applaud your patience. Go to my website, click on some links. I really appreciate it. It costs you nothing. But if you start your Amazon shopping or Brownells, anything like that from my website, I get a little bit. That helps me maintain the website and helps me, is a big help in getting products in my hands, because some manufacturers are willing to risk stuff and send me these things to play with, and then I go and return them. And kudos to Vortex and Athlon and Meopta for being adventurous. There are a lot of people out there, a lot of makers who will not touch me with a 10-foot pole because they don't want to take the risk of me saying something negative about their product. And while I appreciate it, excuse me, every once in a while, I still have to go and buy something and help me pay for it. Start your Amazon shopping on my website if you can. Thank you. Oh yeah, darklordofoptics.com. I always forget to say that.